Hi everyone, welcome to Raw Inspired Living. My name is Kelly. If you are returning, welcome back. If this is your first time, I'm so grateful that you are here. We're going to talk about food today because it's so important and it's such a big passion of mine. It always has been. But I found as I moved into perimenopause and menopause, everything changed. Like all the things that I knew were different. And I don't know, it felt complicated. It didn't need to be if I had understood what I know now, but it really did feel complicated. And that could be you. I mean, you eat well, you always have. Vegetables, whole foods, not too much processed food, you read labels. I mean, I was a huge label reader. You make considered choices. I mean, by most measures, you eat better than the majority of people around you. And that really was me. And yet your body is still changing in ways you can't seem to influence. And that was me, right? If that's your experience, this video is going to explain exactly why. Because the problem isn't your food choices. The problem is that the body receiving those food choices has changed, right? And in midlife, healthy eating on its own is no longer enough. And I really had to learn that. That was something that I really struggled with because I had in my head a certain way of eating, and it took me a little while to really understand why that way wasn't going to work for me in the phase of life that I'm in. So I feel like this is one of the most demoralizing experiences in midlife and one of the most common, right? You've done the reading, you've made the changes, over many years, you're conscious of what goes into your body in a way that took real commitment to build, right? Like you're eating all the healthy food, you're doing all the right things, and the results that you're seeing don't match the effort that you feel like you've been putting in. The reason that this is so confusing is that healthy eating is supposed to be the answer. And that's what I felt. I felt like it was really supposed to be. I was doing everything right. It's what every piece of health advice points to. You've done that, and it's not working the way it's supposed to. That's really exactly where I was. So here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. Your healthy eating is not the problem. What's happened is the hormonal context your body is operating in has fundamentally shifted. And that shift changes what your body needs from the food in ways that go well beyond just the quality of what you're eating. Healthy eating is still the foundation. It is so important for our ongoing health and longevity and our vitality, but it needs a certain structure underneath it that matches the biological reality of midlife. And that is what is so important. And once I understood that, everything changes, right? So here's the reframe that I think changes everything. In midlife, it's not just about what you eat, it's about how your body is being signaled throughout the day. And those signals come from 4 things working together, not just one, right? The timing of your meals, the protein in each meal, the way your carbohydrates are structured, and the amount of fat that you're eating. Those 4 things in midlife are critical. So when all 4 of those things are working together in alignment, your body receives a consistent signal of safety. Your blood sugar is stable, your cortisol remains calm, the fat storage pattern that's been frustrating you around your belly begins to ease. When any one of them is off, even inside a genuinely healthy diet, and I had a genuinely healthy diet, the system can still run in a stress state. And a body running on stress signals holds on to fat, particularly centrally around the belly, and doesn't respond the way you expect it to. It's not really complicated once you understand it, but it is specific. And that specificity is exactly what most healthy eating advice misses entirely. So what I want to share with you now is what I call the Metabolic Stabilisation Framework, the 4 components that work together to bring a midlife body back into balance. This is the foundation of phase 1 inside my Rawly Inspired membership, and it's the shift that changes everything for most women that I work with. I want you to understand that these aren't rules to follow forever. They are specific conditions your body needs during the stabilisation phase to rebuild insulin sensitivity, to reduce cortisol, and restore the metabolic foundation that makes everything else possible. As that foundation becomes established, the rigidity eases and a more intuitive relationship with food becomes genuinely available to you. But we have to build the foundation first. So component 1 is meal rhythm. Eating approximately every 3 to 4 hours while you're awake is the single most important structure that changes like the midlife, experience that you have, right? Long gaps between meals are one of the most reliable cortisol triggers in a midlife body. When blood sugar drops, cortisol rises to compensate, and chronically elevated cortisol is the primary driver of central fat storage, right? We need to understand that. So I now eat 4 meals a day, consistently spaced, and that's how I roll. That's how I do things now, and it works beautifully for my midlife body. Consistent meal timing removes the trigger of that cortisol, right? When your body receives fuel regularly and reliably, it begins to feel safe. And a body that feels safe gradually releases the protective pattern that it's been running. So this isn't about snacking or grazing all day. As I said, it's about 4 structured fuel windows across the day, spaced consistently and not skipped or not extended. The rhythm actually is the medicine. It's such an important step. Component 2 is protein at every meal. In phase 1, protein needs to be deliberate and intentional at every single meal, not as an afterthought, but as an anchor. This is the component most midlife women are most consistently under-delivering on, particularly those eating a plant-based diet where meals can be beautifully nutrient dense, which mine were, but structurally low in protein, which mine were as well. Protein preserves and rebuilds the muscle mass that drives insulin sensitivity. It slows the absorption of carbohydrates eaten in the same meal, which reduces the blood sugar spikes, and it stabilizes your hunger hormones so that reactive, the kind of hunger that drives you urgently to the fridge or for something sweet, right? It doesn't happen anymore, right? So that kind, of urgency that drives you towards fast energy foods becomes much less frequent. As insulin sensitivity is restored and muscle tone is rebuilt through this phase 1, the intentionality around protein naturally eases. It doesn't disappear because protein remains a nutritional priority for a midlife body, but the body becomes more metabolically efficient, I guess, and doesn't require the same structured targeting to stay in balance. So for now, in the stabilisation phase, protein needs to be structured at every meal. So component 3 is structured carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not the enemy in midlife. It's unstructured carbohydrates that are. So when carbohydrates are eaten alone, in large portions, or in liquid form, which was one of my problems because I was on a high raw diet, and I still believe that high raw is so nutritionally beneficial, but my body wasn't in a state to accept that type of eating, right? So large portions of carbohydrates in a liquid form without protein support can create a blood sugar spike and a crash that keeps the cortisol pattern active. When they are eaten in moderate, measured amounts alongside adequate protein, they become beautifully stable fuel. Blood sugar rises gently and falls gently, and cortisol stays quiet. So a helpful guide for most women in this phase 1 is around a half to 1 cup of whole food carbohydrates per meal. So it's measured, not estimated. We need to measure it in this beginning phase when we're trying to reset the metabolism. And it is paired consistently with protein at every meal. So this is not a low carbohydrate approach, it's a structured carbohydrate approach. This is a very significant difference. Component 4 is measured fats. This is the component that surprises most women because healthy fat is so consistently celebrated in wellness culture that the idea of measuring it feels counterintuitive. And I have to be honest, like when I really did measure my fats, that was one of my biggest problems. So the meal spacing was my first issue, and the amount of fats I was eating was my second issue. So healthy fats are important, but in midlife with reduced insulin sensitivity, excess fat intake can slow the glucose clearance, meaning blood sugar takes longer to settle after meals, which keeps the insulin and cortisol response running longer than it really needs to. Small, intentional amounts of healthy fat at each meal keep things satisfying without creating that real heavy drag on the system. This doesn't mean avoiding fat, it means being deliberate about it. Around 1 teaspoon of added fat per meal as a starting guide in this phase 1 where we're rebuilding. An intentional inclusion rather than an unmeasured pour. And that small shift in how fat is approached can have a super meaningful impact on how stable blood sugar remains across the day and how responsive the whole system becomes. These 4 components together, meal rhythm, protein, structured carbohydrates, and measured fats, form the Metabolic Stabilisation Framework. It's not a diet, it's not a set of permanent rules, it's a specific physiologically grounded system for the stabilisation phase of midlife metabolic health. I want to be clear about what this looks like in practice because it is simpler than it sounds. It doesn't mean overhauling everything you eat. Most midlife women are eating a healthy diet, right? And are already making good food choices. What changes is the structure around those food choices. Eating at consistent intervals rather than when you happen to be hungry or food's available. Checking that protein is generally present at every meal rather than incidental. Pairing and measuring carbohydrates rather than estimating them. And being intentional about how much fat goes into each meal rather than just adding it freely. These are structural adjustments, not dietary restrictions. You are not eating less, you are not cutting out food groups, you are eating in a way that sends your body the signal it needs consistently across the day to begin shifting out of the protective state that healthy eating alone was never going to reach. When all 4 of these components are working together, most women begin to notice changes within the first 1 to 2 weeks. It's not dramatic transformation, but just small things like steadier energy, more predictable hunger, reduced cravings, better sleep. These are the early signs that the cortisol pattern is quietening, and then you build from there. So if this framework resonates with you, if you can see where your current approach might be missing one or more of these components, then I know you will love my free PDF with an example 3-day meal phase in there. So jump on the link below and grab it now. You won't be sorry. It will really help you ground in your understanding of what we've just discussed. And if this video has helped you understand something that's been confusing for quite a while, please share it. There are a lot of women eating beautifully in midlife and then wondering why it's not enough, right? And you now know why that is the case. So I hope this video has helped you in some way, and I hope to see you again in Raw Inspired Living.